I was fired after 17 years, but what happened next changed my life forever. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started with a chilling silence, the kind that presses into your skin like a winter breeze. The hum of the office buzzed in my ears, an eerie reminder that everything was about to change. One moment, I was sitting at my desk, a familiar nest of chaos, coffee cups, worn notebooks, and the soft glow of my computer screen. The next, my boss walked in, a storm cloud in human form. Her face was pallid, a tight-lipped mask of unfeeling. I could hardly breathe as she delivered the news, "We're letting you go." Just like that. 17 years of blood, sweat, and tears gone in a heartbeat. I felt my heart drop, a lead weight in my chest. How could they do this? I could see my colleagues peeking over their cubicles, their eyes wide with disbelief. I didn't just lose a job that day. I felt like I lost a part of myself. The walls closed in on me. I stumbled back to my empty cubicle, the air thick and suffocating. The sound of my trembling hands against the desk echoed in my ears. I couldn't stop the tears. Each drop was a question, what now? With barely a moment to collect my thoughts, I was already thinking about my family. My husband, Richard, who relied on my income. Our kids, who were still so young. I pictured their faces, innocent and bright, and the fear surged through me. What would I tell them? The days that followed were a blur of panic and despair. I rushed from one job listing to another, my fingers shaking as I hit refresh on my inbox. The echo of rejection letters became a cruel soundtrack to my life. But something strange began to happen. One evening, as I scrolled through job postings, an ad caught my eye. It was vague and mysterious. Looking for those who dare to change their fate. My heart raced at the prospect. I could feel the spark of hope flicker, even as uncertainty gnawed at my gut. I clicked on it. The page loaded slowly, each passing second heavy with anticipation. Then, there it was, a single line, inviting me to a meeting in an old warehouse downtown. What could this even mean? As the days rolled by, I found myself drawn to that ad. The unknown beckoned, there was a thrill in the mystery, like standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to jump. But should I take that leap? The fear held me back, and yet, curiosity tingled in my veins. On the night of the meeting, I stood outside the darkened warehouse. My heart thundered in my ears, fear mingling with excitement. I took a deep breath, letting the night air fill my lungs. The door creaked open and I stepped inside. The atmosphere was thick, filled with an energy I couldn't quite place. So many strangers, faces hidden in shadows and whispers. They all seemed to know something I didn't. My palms felt clammy as I scanned the room. And then, amidst the crowd, I saw her, an old colleague, someone I hadn't spoken to since my dismissal. How did she know to come here? Is this the way? I thought, my heart racing. Just then, a voice cut through the air, demanding attention. Welcome. Are you ready to discover what's next? I felt a tight knot in my stomach. The answer to my predicament was floating just beyond my reach. The room silenced, all eyes on me. Would I dive in, or would I step back? The weight of the moment hung heavy, anticipation crackling in the air. And there it was, a glimmer of fate shining through the darkness. But also fear, a choice that might change everything. Walking into the unknown felt both exhilarating and terrifying. What awaited me on the other side? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As I stood there in that dimly lit warehouse, the weight of uncertainty pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. The face of my former colleague, Sarah, flickered between recognition and vulnerability. We hadn't spoken in years, but in that moment, it felt like we were both encased in a glass orb, isolated yet somehow together in our shared struggle. She approached me, her eyes whispering understanding. "I didn't think I'd see you here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't sure if I'd have the courage to come. But here we are." "Yeah, here we are," I trailed off, still processing the surreal turn of events. In the minutes that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were all searching for something, lost souls hoping to find a larger purpose in that cavernous space. Across the room, people mingled, forming little circles of muted conversations, laughter bubbling in the air like champagne. Yet, I felt detached from it all. The fear of being left behind gnawed at me, feeding on the remnants of my once steady life. The speaker, a charismatic woman with fiery red hair and an infectious smile, captured everyone's attention. "You are not alone," she proclaimed, her voice resonating like a heartbeat through the crowd. "Each of you stands on the precipice of change. Each of you holds the power to rewrite your story." Her words sent a ripple of excitement through the gathering, igniting small embers of hope. A newfound determination flickered inside me. Yet, the memories of my dismissal taunted me, whispering doubts that clung to my conscience. What if I stepped out of my comfort zone only to fall again? Before long, the speaker opened the floor for questions, a wave of hands shooting up like flowers reaching for sunlight. I held my breath, unsure if I had the audacity to share my fears, or if I would succumb to the silence that had swallowed me whole for the past few weeks. Just as I was about to shy away, Sarah nudged my arm, encouraging me with a reassuring smile. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like a lifeline thrown into my sea of doubts. "Can I really change my fate?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I lost everything I worked for. How do I start again?" The speaker looked right at me, her gaze unwavering and filled with empathy. "It begins with believing in yourself, even when it feels impossible. Every ending is just a new beginning." Her conviction washed over me, stirring something within that I thought was long extinguished. With renewed hope, I tentatively joined a group discussion, where we shared our dreams and fears as well as our failures. Each story, a delicate thread woven into the tapestry of our shared experience. I listened to them, their struggles resonating with my own. Their kindness wrapped around me like a warm blanket in the dead of winter, reminding me that no one had to carry their burdens alone. But just as I arose from this sense of belonging, a message pinged on my phone, jolting me back into reality. "Richard." My heart sank as I looked down, grasping my phone tightly, my palms sweating. He had sent a picture of the kids, playing in the snow, laughter frozen in time. I could almost hear their giggles. A pang of guilt surged through me. Were they worried about me? Were they feeling the weight of my unsteady footing? The meeting drew to a close, but the sense of camaraderie elicited a promise of connection among us. I exchanged numbers with Sarah and the few others who lingered. Together, we stepped outside, sharing a moment of celebration under the starry sky. There was an exhilaration in the air, our dreams casting faint glimmers of light in the darkness. But that night, as I laid in bed, the creeping shadows of doubt returned. The warmth of newfound friendships felt fragile. What if this was all a fleeting illusion to trap me into believing that everything was going to be all right? As sleep eluded me, the message loomed heavy in my mind. What would I tell my children if I didn't succeed? Tomorrow would be filled with the daunting task of proving to Richard that things were changing for the better. I steeled myself. As I tried to picture how I would explain my adventures in the dark warehouse, assuming it was a foolish gamble, or were Senethar failed attempt to rekindle hope. My heart ached thinking about their expectations, weighing the truth against the fragments of my shattered self-belief. Just as I began to drift off, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number illuminated the darkness. "We've noticed your potential. Are you ready for a real challenge? Meet me tomorrow at the old coffee shop on 5th. My heart raced as the words spun wildly in my mind. Was this the opportunity one had been waiting for, or was it another cruel twist in a string of disappointments? The choice hung like a pendulum, swinging towards an uncertain fate. In that moment, everything felt at stake. I held my breath, uncertain if I was ready to leap again or if I should retreat to the safety of the familiar. The morning sun broke through the veil of clouds, spilling golden light into my room. Yet, its warmth did little to soothe the turmoil churning within me. I stared at the ceiling, recalling the message that had invaded my thoughts last night. A challenge? An opportunity? Or simply another chance to face failure? As I prepared for the day, I resolved to focus on the positivity I had felt the night before. I approached breakfast as if it were an uncharted territory, trying to mask my anxiety with a feigned enthusiasm, putting on a cheerful front for the kids. They sat giggling over cereal, blissfully unaware of my racing heart. "Mom, can we build a snowman today?" Lily's eyes sparkled with innocent excitement. "Of course we can, sweetheart. That sounds like a lot of fun," I responded, forcing a smile that felt imbalanced. Inside, I grappled with the weight of my choices, my obligations to them, contrasted against my primal need to explore this unexpected calling. As the morning continued, moments of lucidity pierced through my fog of fear. The joy in their laughter, the warmth of their hugs, in those small exchanges, I found flickers of strength. Perhaps I could muster the courage to not only change my life but also to inspire them to chase their dreams, to let them know it was okay to fall and rise again. "Mom, why don't you ever smile?" Ben, my 10-year-old, asked, tilting his head in that endearing way that only he could manage. It was a question laced with innocence, yet it shook me to my core. "I'm just thinking about some things, buddy," I replied, fighting to maintain composure. "But you keep smiling like that. It's contagious." With their laughter echoing in my ears, I dropped them off at school and drove to the old coffee shop on 5th with a heart that hammered like a drum. Each turn felt like a compass leading me toward an unknown destiny. But what if this was the risk that finally tethered me back to the ground? Upon arriving, I found the storefront quaint yet hauntingly familiar. The aromatic blend of coffee introduced a comforting air, but it was the mystery surrounding the invitation that enveloped me in nervous anticipation. I stepped inside, scanning the room for any hint of the sender. Was I chasing shadows? And then I saw her standing at a corner table, her silhouette shrouded in the soft amber glow of the hanging lights. It was the woman from the warehouse, her fiery hair cascading like a flame. I felt an undeniable pull. Fate had woven us back into the same tapestry. "Glad you made it," she said, her voice warm and inviting, cutting through my apprehension like a knife. "Mia, thanks for reaching out," I managed, glancing around like a deer caught in headlights. Each movement felt deliberate, calculated, as I settled across from her. "What's this all about? I see potential in you, raw and untapped." She leaned closer, her intensity laying bare the vulnerability I had fought so hard to conceal. "What if I told you that you could work with me on a project that could redefine your career?" Hope danced behind her words, an almost tangible entity. I hesitated, glancing at my phone, reminding myself of the laughter at home and the weight of expectations waiting there. The thrill clawed at my throat, but the shadows of doubt taunted me too. "What kind of project?" I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. Mia pulled out a portfolio, filled with sketches and ideas that overflowed with passion and possibility. Each page was a spark of creativity that mirrored my desires. The specter of the safe, predictable path I had clung to no longer seemed appealing. "A community-driven initiative, something that can bring together people looking to reinvent themselves, just like you," she explained. "You would be amazing at this, and it would also allow you to connect with others who've been through similar struggles." As I flipped through the pages, a fire ignited inside me. I had dreamed of leading, of creating, not just for myself but for those lost souls I had seen in the warehouse. But then it hit me hard, the balancing act between my aspirations and my family loomed just beyond reach. "Why me?" I blurted out, skepticism overwhelming my excitement. Just my voice faltered as I searched for the right words. "A fired employee trying to find her way." "Precisely," she responded confidently, locking eyes with me. "You have lived it. You know the pulse of fear and the desire for change." That's what makes you valuable here. Within those few moments, I sensed a portal had opened, leading to something vast and terrifying. Yet as I leaned into the pull of possibility, my phone vibrated on the table, shattering the fragile bubble that had begun to form. It was Richard. The kids miss you. Can we talk later? I need you here. A sudden tether pulled me back to my reality, tearing my focus apart. Mia regarded me with an understanding that layered the tension in the air like a thick fog. The possibilities before me shimmered with the allure of hope, but Richard's words weighed heavily on my heart. In that cacophony of need, a new ember ignited the realization that life was not just about me anymore, but about every choice that carried their futures with it. As I wrestled with my spiraling thoughts, Mia continued to speak, her voice a soothing balm against the storm within me. I stood at a crossroads, and the weight of what lay ahead pressed down on me with the urgency of 1,000 decisions yet to be made. As I gathered the courage to respond, my heart raced with uncertainty, echoing with my past while whispering urges of an untapped future. The journey had been long and painful, yet here I was standing on the edge, ready to leap into an unknown destiny, a choice that could forever alter the course of my family, my life, my identity. The chill of the afternoon air seeped into my bones as I walked back to the car, the echoes of Mia's words still swirling in my mind like autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind. I had never been one to thrive on uncertainty, but the raw potential she described clung to my thoughts, a tantalizing whisper that refused to fade. The ride home felt interminable. With each stoplight, I replayed our conversation, my heart warring between hope and guilt. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house felt like a fortress, guarding the quiet struggles of past years. As I entered, the familiar cacophony of toys and distant laughter met me, but even that couldn't quell the anxiety brewing inside me. Mom. Look what I made. Lily rushed toward me, her face beaming like a sunbeam cutting through the clouds. She thrust a paper giraffe towards me, its colors vibrant against the chaotic background of crayon scribbles. That's amazing, sweetheart. You're such an artist. I knelt down to her level, forcing the excitement into my voice, but the knot in my stomach twisted tighter. As happiness flickered in her bright eyes, I felt the weight of my indecision. How could I possibly pursue my dreams without considering the impact on them? Do you like it? She asked, her voice tinged with hope. That I love it. It's going right on the fridge, I promised, my heart aching to shield her from my tumult. I plastered a smile on my face, a mask that felt increasingly cumbersome. The truth was, I was drowning in a tide of doubts. Later that evening, as the kids settled into bed, I lingered in the hallway, leaning against the cool wall. I could hear their soft voices murmuring secrets, the innocence of childhood wrapped them in a bubble that felt foreign to me. Would pursuing this new venture serve them, or would it only widen the distance between us? Just then, a text chimed on my phone, pulling me from my thoughts. It was from Mia. Thinking of you. Remember, you're not alone in this. Let's meet tomorrow to brainstorm some ideas. My heart raced. The offer dangled over me like a ripe fruit. It felt tantalizingly close yet still so far away from the safety of my current life. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror. A gentle knock broke the silence. Ben poked his head in. Mom. Are you okay? The concern in his eyes fractured the wall I had so carefully constructed. I sighed, just thinking, buddy. It's been a long day. Can we talk? He asked, stepping into the room, his voice steady beyond his years. I nodded, motioning for him to sit by me. Did you have another bad day at work? He asked, his earnestness catching me off guard. That it wasn't bad, just complicated, I replied honestly. You know how sometimes you have to make choices, and they're not easy. He nodded solemnly. I've seen you work hard. If something makes you happy, you should try it. It's okay if it's hard. You always tell us to believe in our dreams. My breath hitched. The weight of his words settled over me like an unexpected blanket of warmth. You're right, Ben. But what if I fail? Then you try again, he said matter-of-factly, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. I'll always support you, no matter what. The tears I had been holding back threatened to spill, the love for my children intertwining with the fear and hope battling within me. I pulled him close, my heart pounding against his small frame. "Thank you for saying that, honey. It means more than you know." After his gentle reassurances, I tucked the kids in, each hug igniting a flicker of determination within me. As I tiptoed back to my room, a sense of possibility broke through the darkness that had enveloped my thoughts, but just as I began to believe that maybe I could step beyond my fears, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Richard. "Can we talk? I need to discuss the finances for the kids. Things are tight." I stared at the words, feeling the ground shift beneath me once more. Suddenly, my dreams felt egoistic, marred by the reality of our financial strain. I thought of Mia, and the bright ideas promising vibrancy in my life. But reality pulled me back, like waves eroding the shore. The clock ticked on as I sat in the stillness, my heart racing with uncertainty. I was teetering on the edge of change, yet the storm of challenges I had to navigate pressed heavily upon my shoulders. What if taking that leap meant shattering the fragile balance of my family life? As I lay in bed that night, the weight of what lay ahead was dizzying. I wanted to dream again, to believe that maybe I could forge a path and still be there for my children. But with every hope came the anchor of reality. With the ache of anticipation coursing through me, I stared up at the darkened ceiling, my thoughts twisting into a spiral. Would the next day bring clarity, or merely deepen the conflict within me? My heart raced with unanswered questions, each one a haunting echo in the depths of my imagination. And my phone buzzed once more as I drifted off. One last message from Mia, this time a simple phrase: "Let's ignite your fire." I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, a prelude to a whirlwind that would soon engulf my life in ways I couldn't yet fathom. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across the room. I could hear the distant chirping of birds, a gentle reminder that the world outside my cocoon of uncertainty continued to turn. As I sat up in bed, the flicker of Mia's words "ignite your fire" ignited a sliver of hope within me, but the weight of Richard's message loomed large, dulling its glow. After a few moments of gathering my thoughts, I decided to push through the fog of hesitation. I had promised the kids I'd do my best to dream again. With determined resolve, I prepared for the day, each movement a silent declaration to myself. The breakfast table was alive with the delightful chaos of my children, Lily laughing as she dropped a slice of toast, Ben engaging her in whimsical storytelling. Seeing them now, I remembered the importance of dreams not just for me, but for them as well. "Mom, can you help me with my animal project after school?" Ben asked, his eyes sparkling with excitement. My heart swelled. These little moments of their joy were what mattered most. I nodded, hiding the fluctuations of fear surging beneath my calm exterior. "Of course. We'll make a masterpiece," I replied, letting their laughter wash over me, if only for a moment, helping me drown out the whispers of worry. Yet as I stood at the kitchen counter packing their lunches, the weight of responsibility pressed on me like a heavy hand. I was trying to gather every ounce of strength, but Richard's impending conversation lingered. As I slipped in Ben's favorite snack, the reality reared its head again. Time felt warped throughout the day, each minute stretching on as I approached my meeting with Mia. I arrived at the cafe earlier than planned, seeking solace in a steaming cup of coffee. The aroma filled my senses, but it did little to ease the tempest in my mind. "Mia," I called as she walked in, her presence as warm as the sun breaking through clouds. Her enthusiasm radiated the positivity I desperately needed. "Ready to brainstorm?" she asked, sliding into the chair opposite me. As we discussed ideas, each concept felt like a lifeboat amidst stormy seas, but the doubts crept in uninvited. "Mia, this is all so exciting, but I need to think about my kids." "And stop right there," she interrupted gently. "It's okay to be scared, but don't let fear stifle the dreams you can offer them too. They need to see you thrive." Just as her words began to fill me with courage again, my phone vibrated violently against the table, breaking the dam of my thoughts. Richard's name flashed across the screen. My heart raced, torn between the loom of potential disaster and the hope burgeoning within me. "Sorry, I have to take this," I said hurriedly, swiping the screen. "Richard," I greeted, surprised by the tightness in my chest. "Hey, we need to talk about the bills. The expenses this month are way over budget, and I don't think we can keep up if you decide to." He hesitated, and I could hear the weight in his voice. "If you decide to chase these new projects." Each word felt like a crack in the foundation of my dreams, sending tremors through my resolve. "I thought we could discuss things calmly. I want to find a solution that works for us. The kids are counting on us." He mumbled agreement, but I sensed the unspoken tension lingering like a shadow. "I'm just saying it's not the right time for you to risk everything." As I hung up, I felt the room narrowing around me, burdened by the reality of two vastly different expectations. "You okay?" Mia asked with genuine concern, capturing the jagged emotions spilling into the air. I nodded, but the smile felt fragile. "I just need to adjust my perspective," I whispered, feeling the coolness of her understanding eases my spiraling thoughts. We resumed talking, but for every idea we shared, Richard's voice echoed a warning in my mind. It felt impossible to breathe easy. When we parted ways, I felt restored yet shaken. The fire Mia spoke of flickered with promise but juxtaposed starkly against my mounting fears. Back home, I joined Ben at the table for his animal project. His enthusiasm revived the deep corners of my heart that had begun to harden. "Mom, look." He held up a drawn picture of a layered savanna scene. "We can use this to show the giraffe. Your imagination is incredible," I said, tucking an errant strand of hair behind my ear, stealing strength from his excitement. But as I tucked in with him, my phone buzzed once more, its unexpected urgency feeling almost sinister. It was a text from Mia. "I have something important to tell you. Can we talk tonight?" My heart skipped a beat. What could possibly change everything again? I looked at Ben, his innocent joy shadowed by my unspoken worries. I was standing on a precipice, uncertain of which way I could jump, hoping clutching this little piece of hope didn't mean losing everything that mattered. As I prepared for another curveball to life's ongoing chaotic cosmos, I realized how essential these moments were, how entwined my fate was with theirs. What lay ahead could redefine everything. Could I conquer it all, or would the incessant pull of reality drag me back to the safe, yet confining, shores? The sift of time felt heavy and laden with unanswered questions as I held my breath for what might come next. The evening air was thick with an electric tension as I put Ben to bed. The shadows in his room danced softly along the walls, animated by the flickering light of his bedside lamp, yet my thoughts were far from serene. Each bedtime story turned into a struggle against the rising tide of anxiety threatening to consume me. The grip of uncertainty tightened around my chest, and I forced each word out as though it might somehow anchor me to the reality I wished to reclaim. "Mom," Ben said sleepily, his eyes barely open. "Are you okay?" His question pierced through my bravado, and suddenly I was standing at the crossroads of my fears and his innocence. "Absolutely, sweetheart," I replied, injecting enthusiasm into my voice despite the knot in my stomach. "I'm just thinking about all the amazing things we can create together." He smiled with delightful ignorance, the way children do, and closed his eyes, snuggling deeper into his blanket. But as I kissed his forehead, my heart ached, knowing that the stark reality of my situation loomed just outside the door like a restless specter lurking in the shadows. After tiptoeing out of his room, I leaned against the wall, grappling with the horizon of choices ahead. The message from Mia hung over me like a storm cloud, dark and ominous, promising a shift I didn't yet understand. Did she find a new opportunity for us? Was she somehow going to pull me from the deep chasm of uncertainty I found myself in? Or was this just another reminder of how tenuous every thread in my life had become? The hum of the house felt suffocating, each creak of the floorboards whispered tales of the pasta past that felt simpler, yet was laden with its own challenges now transmuted into something greater. I poured myself a glass of water, my hands trembling slightly, and glanced at the clock. It was nearly time for my call with Mia that I settled into the living room, the familiar couch now feeling like a safe haven and a prison all at once. My phone buzzed at precisely 7 p.m., and I swallowed a rush of apprehension as I picked it up. "Mia, is everything all right?" I asked, surprised by the quiver in my voice. "Hey, it's good to hear your voice," she said, her tone warm yet tinged with an undercurrent of seriousness. "I wanted to talk to you about a project that came up, but it has major implications." My pulse quickened. "Is it about the art showcase?" "It's bigger than that," she stated. "I've been offered a chance to help curate a national campaign for a major brand. They're looking for unique voices, and I immediately thought of you." "But there's a catch," that I inhaled sharply, feeling the groundwork of my hopes shift beneath me. "What kind of catch?" "They want a partner, someone who can bring a fresh perspective and tell a story. I want that someone to be you," she explained, excitement edging her voice. "But it could interfere with your family responsibilities, and I know how much they weigh on you." Her words hung in the air, both exhilarating and terrifying, heavy with unchosen paths. "Mia, what if I fail? What if Richard is right?" "Listen to me," she replied firmly. "You're not just doing this for you. You're doing it for your kids, too. To show them that it's okay to chase dreams, that life is bigger than worries and bills. I believe in you." I closed my eyes, feeling a flicker of hope but also the dread of burdening my children further. "But if it doesn't work out, then you carry on," she urged gently. "That's life. But this could be your moment. You owe it to yourself and to them to at least try. You can't let fear dictate your decisions." That I took a breath, weighing her words against the weight on my shoulders. "So, what do I need to do?" "Meet me tomorrow. Well, start brainstorming ideas together. This could be the kickstart you need." Her enthusiasm was contagious, but buzzing behind it was the thrum of doubt. "I'll think about it," I said, knowing full well it was more than just contemplation. It was a life-altering decision that could lead me down a path of either tremendous fulfillment or catastrophic failure. "Hey," Mia's voice softened, drawing me back from the brink of my worries. "Whatever happens, you're not alone in this. I'm in your corner." Her words washed over me, and for the first time that day, I felt the weight lift just a little, full of warmth and encouragement. "Thank you, Mia." As I hung up, a swirl of emotions surged within me. The flicker of hope that Mia had ignited coursed through my veins. Perhaps I could be more than just a reluctant participant in my own life, perhaps there was a fire just waiting to fuel my yearning for dreams. But as I waited to breathe deeply and solidify my resolve, my phone buzzed again, a sudden interruption. This time, it was an unknown number, and my heart sank at the potential for bad news. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Is this Sophia?" A deep voice, unfamiliar yet unsettling, resonated on the other end. "Yes," I replied, my voice wavering. "I have information about Richard and his financial situation. You need to know the truth." My heart lurched into my throat, urgency clashing with confusion. What truth? What could possibly unravel next? I stood on the precipice of revelation, the boundary between my choices and the unknown now perilously precarious. What kind of storm was brewing just out of sight? The night stretched before me like a dark river, each minute rolling past, thick with uncertainty. I paced the living room, phone still gripped tightly in my hand, the unfamiliar voice echoing in my mind. Richard's financial situation. The words felt like ice, sending chills down my spine. Did I truly want to unearth whatever buried secrets lurked beneath the surface? With each step, I felt the tiles beneath my feet shift and sway like the emotional ground I stood on, teetering between the need to protect Ben and unravel the truth about my past. What could it mean for him? For us? I hesitated, the internal debate weighing heavily on my heart. I needed answers, and I needed them now. "Who is this?" I managed to ask, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just someone who knows more than they should," the voice replied. "Richard is in deep trouble, deeper than anyone realizes. If you care about protecting your family, you need to pay attention." Before I could formulate a coherent response, he continued, "I can meet you tomorrow." But you have to promise me you'll listen. The surreal tone of the conversation hung in the air, laced with an urgency that pulled at my instincts. Where? I asked, heart racing as fear mingled with curiosity. Cafe Greenlight, 10 a.m. Just be careful who you confide in, he whispered before ending the call. Questions swirled through my mind, a chaotic tempest. What kind of trouble was Richard in, financial or otherwise? I leaned against the kitchen counter, feeling the cool would press into my back as dread settled heavily on my shoulders. Calm down, Sophia, I urged myself, but to my dismay, my thoughts ran wild like a stampede. The morning came too soon, the sun peeking through the curtains with a brightness that mocked my inner turmoil. Ben's laughter rang through the hallway as he raced about, oblivious to the unwelcome shadows hovering in my heart. I put on a brave face, slipping into the role of caretaker and mother, while the call from the mysterious voice loomed ominously on my mind. As I prepared breakfast, the familiar rhythm soothed me momentarily. The smell of eggs sizzling in the pan and the sound of Ben's footfalls provided solace, a gentle reminder that even amid chaos, there were precious moments to savor. It was during the riotous laughter over a spilled glass of juice that the warm light of hope flickered faintly in my chest. Perhaps Mia was right. Perhaps I could hang on to those small moments, using them as my buoy, but the allure of truth tugged at my resolve. I finished preparing Ben's toast, breathing in his innocent delight as he recounted the plot of his favorite cartoon. Mom? He asked, his blue eyes suddenly serious. What's wrong? Caught off guard, I paused for a moment, analyzing my reflection in his gaze. Nothing, sweetheart. Just, thinking a bit too much. He nodded, still cautious. You know you can tell me anything, right? A pang of regret pierced through me at the weight of my silent suffering. I bent down to his level, cupping his cheek in my hand. I know, Ben. And I will, I promised. As I helped him finish breakfast, I steeled myself. The looming meeting at the cafe felt like walking into a storm, and though I held tightly to my hope of change, I was acutely aware of how easily the tempest could sweep me away. By the time I reached Cafe Greenlight, my palms were slick with sweat. The lingering aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped me like a warm embrace. I scanned the crowded tables, anxiety settling like lead in my stomach as I searched for the potential harbinger of truth. A tall man, somewhat disheveled with weary eyes, waved me over from a corner table. As I approached, his face shifted from nervousness to sharp clarity, as if he were completely aware of the weight each word carried. Thank you for coming, he said, motioning for me to sit. Who are you? I asked, struggling to keep my voice calm. Let's just say I used to work for Richard, he replied, his tone heavy with caution. And now I can't stand by and watch while he digs himself deeper into this mess. The coffee shop hummed around us, but in that moment, a bubble formed, isolating us completely. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. What mess? His fingers drummed nervously on the table. Richard's been involved in some questionable business. It started slow, but things spiraled out of control over the years. If you're not careful, it could bring everything crashing down, you included. Why should I believe you? I felt a glimmer of defensiveness. He glanced around before leaning closer, lowering his voice. Because I heard him talking about you and how he plans to leave. I don't think he's ever intended to support you. This isn't just financial, it's much worse. The world around me blurred into a cacophony of emotions: disbelief, anger, fear, and an icy sense of betrayal. Richard had always been so adept at weaving tales of stability and loyalty, promising me security while at the same time building a facade that threatened to collapse in on itself. Why are you telling me this? I whispered, acutely aware of how my life had become a house of cards, stacked high, yet every tiny tremor threatened to bring it crashing down. Because, he said firmly, you deserve to know the truth before it's too late. And just then, the door of the cafe swung open, a rush of cold air trailing in behind the newcomer. I turned instinctively, eyes wide. My heart sank as Richard stepped inside, scanning the room like a hawk, a predator sensing a threat. My breath caught in my throat. Sophia, we need to talk, he said, voice steely as his gaze found me across the crowded cafe. Time seemed to stand still as the reality of his presence wrapped around me like chains. The weight of the choices I faced loomed heavier than ever. What new revelations would unfold with this confrontation? What truths would rise from the ashes of betrayal? I was frightened, yet somehow resolute. The moment of reckoning had come, whether I was ready or not. My heart raced as Richard's eyes landed on me, a storm brewing within their depths. I struggled to process the layers of betrayal and fear, my thoughts crisscrossing like vines clinging desperately to a wall. The man I had trusted, built a life with, now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by a darker reality. Before I could register my thoughts, Richard was already striding towards our table, every step pounding in my ears like a war drum. "Why are you talking to him?" Richard demanded, his voice low and threatening. I forced myself to hold his gaze, defiance igniting within me. "Because I need to understand what's happening, Richard." The truth. He shot a quick glance at the man beside me, his expression darkening. "You shouldn't have come here, now get up, we're leaving," he said tersely. "That's not going to happen," I replied, glancing back at the man whose warnings had swirled my world into chaos. "I deserve to know what's going on." Richard's features twisted into a mask of resentment, tension electric between us. "The less you know, the better, Sophia." I felt the ground beneath me shifting once more, collapsing into uncertainty. But as much as Richard's words held an unsettling weight, the truth seemed to shimmer just beyond my reach. And what if knowing protects Ben? What then? I spat out, anchoring myself in the one certainty that mattered. His jaw tightened, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of something other than anger, fear, perhaps. I wanted to pry deeper, to chip away at the carefully constructed walls he had built. But in that moment, the darkness circled closer, wrapping tighter around my chest. "We can discuss this at home," he replied, his voice dipping into a low hiss. But it felt like a threat echoing in the cafe's close quarters, holding an audience captive on the edge of their seats. The man next to me shifted slightly, leaning back as if preparing to intervene if things escalated. I felt a surge of gratitude for his presence, his composure anchoring my spiraling thoughts. "You can't silence her any longer, Richard," he said, his tone steady. "She deserves the truth. You owe her that much." The weight of the world settled heavily on my chest, expectations morphing into a solid wall that threatened to suffocate me. "You don't owe me anything, Richard," I replied, keeping my voice steady, though my emotions felt like an open wound, raw and bleeding. "But what scares me is the lengths you'll go to keep your secrets." Richard's posture shifted slightly, tension rippling through him like a taut wire ready to snap. "Secrets protect," he began, but I cut him off. "No, they suffocate. You've built a whole life on lies, and I refuse to let you keep me in the dark." My voice rang louder than I intended, drawing eyes from nearby tables. It was as if I had erupted into vulnerability, revealing the precarious ground beneath our family's facade to the world. The cafe buzzed with an uncomfortable energy, an audience to our unraveling. Richard's expression twisted into a mask of anger and desperation. I could feel the eyes of strangers attempting to gauge the truth, and I felt exposed. "That's it, we're leaving," he said, gripping my arm forcefully, his nails pressing into my skin. For a moment, I felt panic rise, but it ignited a fire in me that I hadn't realized I still possessed. "No," I said clearly, shaking off his grip. "You will not control me anymore. Not now. Not ever." In that moment, the atmosphere shifted, the almost electric tension crackled through the cafe as if it recognized the breaking point. Richard stepped back, his eyes flashing with something inscrutable. Was it anger? Fear? Regret? I couldn't tell. Behind me, the man leaned forward, echoing my sentiment. "If you walk out that door now, Richard, you're throwing away your family. You need to consider the ramifications of that choice." As silence blanketed our table, my heart hammered, caught in the crossfire between love and disbelief. In that silence, my resolve strengthened. Hope flickered from my core, bold and precarious, intertwined with the fear of losing everything I had built. I inhaled deeply, searching for my power amid the chaos. Richard's gaze darted between me and the man, weighing options as uncertainty flickered across his face. Slowly, he settled back into his chair, the fight in him clashing with a visible weariness. Fine, he finally uttered through gritted teeth, but you need to understand, Sophia, this goes deeper than you think. A resurgence of anxiety filled the spaces around us, the weight of his words hovering like a storm cloud. I felt slightly unmoored yet anchored by a sense of purpose. Then let's talk, I challenged, steeling myself for whatever truths he would unleash, but before any more words could escape his lips, the door swung open once more, a figure stepping in that froze the moment in place. My breath was taken away when I recognized the woman who entered. Claire. Richard's sister, an enigmatic presence shrouded in layers of her own family's secrets. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Richard and I, confusion knitting her brow. With a determined stride, she approached our table. "What's going on?" she questioned, her voice steady, demanding an explanation. This was utterly unexpected, a plot twist I never anticipated. My emotions danced perilously close to the edge of chaos, now intertwined not just with Richard, but also with a woman whose own life had been marred by the quiet storms of our family dynamic. And as my heart sank further into the unknown, I wondered if Claire held the key to unravel the remaining secrets, or if she was just another obstacle in a path already strewn with lies. Claire's presence sent shockwaves through the air, a rippling intensity that shifted the dynamics around our table. The latent tension seemed to bind us together in an unwelcome alliance, three souls intertwined by the gravity of our shared history, yet tragically separated by the truths we'd crafted in the shadows. "What's going on?" she asked again, her brows furrowing deeper as she focused on Richard. There was a flicker in her eyes, a hint of concern, perhaps even frustration that suggested she had been on the periphery of this turmoil long before I arrived. Richard shifted in his chair, his jaw clenched as he pinched the bridge of his nose, an instinctive move that conveyed exasperation. "It's nothing you need to concern yourself with, Claire," he muttered, but even to me, the words felt feeble, almost desperate. With a firm resolve, Claire shook her head. "No, it's clearly something. I know the two of you well enough to see when something is brewing beneath the surface." Her gaze bore through Richard, challenging him to respond, to divert this path of avoidance back to the conversation we had started moments ago. The cafe seemed to hold its breath, the ambient noise of clinking cutlery and muffled conversations fading to a mere hum. I felt the raw edges of vulnerability peel back once more. It was one thing to confront Richard, it was another to do so under the scrutiny of Claire. "She deserves to know the truth, Richard," I echoed Claire's sentiment, feeling the embers of courage flicker in my chest. Claire nodded in support, her presence like a balm, soothing yet invigorating my spirit. "We all do, Richard. And I hope you're not planning on keeping secrets from your own sister. Betrayal doesn't just break people, it tears families apart," I added, my tone unwavering. "We can't fix what's broken without acknowledging its existence." Richard's eyes darted between us, the flickers of vulnerability resting against arrogance. He pulled back slightly, almost as if shrinking inward under the weight of our insistence. "This isn't the time or place." The edge in his voice rang hollow, cracking just enough to reveal layers of uncertainty. "That I disagree," Claire interjected fiercely, taking a step closer. "If there's one thing I learned from my experience with our family, it's that we can't simply brush things under the carpet. It only leads to a disastrous fall." Did her words echo my own? I felt a pang of connection to Claire. Here was a sister standing up for the same family that had shattered my trust. Wrapped in our shared struggle were moments of hope, stitched together by the threads of honesty, pulling at the fabric of Richard's reticence. "But it is complicated," Richard said, his voice dropping almost to a whisper as he looked at Claire. "You know this, that I know nothing, Richard." "Not anymore," Claire replied, her voice tempered with an uncharacteristic anger. "Not if you don't tell me the truth." The atmosphere felt thick with expectation, charged with the silent question of whether Richard would finally pivot towards honesty or cling to the shadows he had created. Deep inside, I craved to be the catalyst for change, yet the fear of what that might unleash in him held me back, a weight I couldn't shake off. As the silence enveloped us, the war inside Richard raged visibly, his eyes flared with emotions cycling through betrayal, fear, and an underlying spark of desperation. "Fine," he finally said, frustration coloring every syllable. "But don't say I didn't warn you." My heart seized at his admission. The pressure mounted, hovering painfully in the space between fear and anticipation. I could only hope for clarity where ambiguity had reigned for too long. Start, I prompted. What do you need to warn us about? Richard took a shaky breath, fighting tears that gathered in the corners of his eyes. It involves Ben, he said, each word a sharp brushstroke that painted dread over the canvas of our family portrait. Ben. What about him? I questioned, my heart racing, imagining every worst-case reality. There are things about his paternity, things I haven't told you, Richard confessed, direct and harsh, his walls fracturing. Complicated things about who he really is. The air in the cafe electrified, a chilling revelation that coiled itself around my heart. What do you mean? I pressed, feeling a swell of fear threaten to consume me. That I am not just his fat hair, at least not in a conventional sense, Richard continued, his voice a strained whisper. Ben's adoption was a cover. There was so much I didn't want you to know. He's tied to things from my past, things I thought I could bury. That my mind raced, flitting between confusion and anger. Richard. How could you hide this from me? I felt the ground beneath me shift again, my understanding of our entire life corroding like rust. But Claire began, her eyes widening in disbelief as realization dawned upon her. Is that why you didn't want to tell Sophia the truth? Because you at that moment, we were blindsided by a figure emerging from the back of the cafe. A motherly face suddenly appeared around the corner, tearing through our conversation like paper, her eyes falling hard on Richard. And then, my heart dropped as I gathered the pieces of her identity, her presence surging like a tide. It was Ben's biological mother. The truth was about to unravel even faster than I had anticipated, the fabric of my life threatening to unravel in ways I had never imagined. I could only stare, breathless, as the world I thought I knew continued to crumble around me. The air enveloped her, a ghost from our past, sharply contrasting against the chaos that swirled around us. As she stepped into the light of the cafe, it was as though the clamor and chatter ceased. Her penetrating gaze fell on Richard, and the look of sheer astonishment in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. Nicole, he breathed, barely a whisper. I felt the panic rise, climbing like ivy around my heart. The room was closing in, not just on me, but on the truth that had lain buried between us all this time. As she approached, I searched for the meaning behind her sudden reappearance, dread coiling tightly in my chest, yet a morbid curiosity kept me anchored to my seat. I had to find you, Nicole said, her voice a mask of resolve mixed with vulnerability. It's time you knew. Each word was a bombshell, detonating the fragile peace we had clutching to. Richard's face contorted, 1,000 emotions flashing in mere seconds, fear, regret, and an unmistakable hint of guilt. But it wasn't fear that gripped me, it was an overwhelming torrent of emotions, satire of longing, betrayal, anger, and the gnawing hunger for truth. What truth? I demanded, my voice steady despite the storm alight in my soul. Ben, she said softly, taking a step closer, not toward Richard, but toward me. He's my son. The words shattered the delicate tapestry of what I thought was my life. It sank in, and as if the floor had fallen away, I couldn't breathe. What? I whispered, disbelief coursing through my veins like ice. Richard's silence spoke volumes, suffocating the space around us. I turned to him, seeking an explanation, but the weight of it all sat like a lead balloon between us. A child I had loved, nurtured, and depended on for my own happiness was suddenly tied to someone who had stood before me, once simply an enigmatic silhouette in our history. No. I shouted as tears brimmed in my eyes, you're lying. You have to be. But with each flicker of uncertainty that crossed Richard's face, I felt my foundation splinter into jagged spikes of disillusionment. She's telling the truth, Richard finally murmured, shoulders sagging under the weight of his confession. I didn't know how to tell you. We were young, reckless, his words faltered, unshed tears glistening in his eyes. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could protect you and keep us together by hiding it. But you didn't protect us. I hissed, anguish spilling forth unchecked. You just pushed me further into a web of lies. The hurt welled up behind my eyes, threatening to spill over. I had tried to build something real, something normal, while he had stifled the very essence of our family. Nicole stood there, a symphony of emotions etched across her features, guilt dancing with hope. Sophia, I never wanted this chaos, I wanted to do what was best for him. I thought you deserved a happy family, free of the past. Was it your choice to take Ben away? I seethed, disbelief and sadness inching through me like a chilling draft. Or was it his? Richard hung his head, regret etched in his features like deep lines on parchment. I longed to slap the anger out of him and embrace the woman standing before me, a stranger yet somehow cradled in the arms of everything I valued. I felt untethered, suspended between two worlds, the one I thought I knew, and the one that unveiled itself beneath the shadows that I can't change the past, but Ben needs to know the truth, Nicole said firmly, her resolve bathing the moment in a warm glow. Does he? I asked, my voice breaking under the weight of my shattered expectations. Suddenly, the idea of truth felt heavy, like a stone I feared might swallow us whole. Richard reached for my hand, but I recoiled instinctively. You don't get to touch me, I stated, eyes locked with his in a silent battle of despair and determination. You shattered my world. Why should I trust you now? I never wanted to hurt you, Sophia, Richard implored, his voice raw, but the familiarity of his tone felt like a poison. Everything I did was in misguided protection, I know that now. But I am terrified at the prospect of you finding out this way. I should have been the one to tell you. My heart raced, bombarded by the raw truths that stung like sharp nails. Everything that defined my life was shifting. I glanced at Nicole, remembering the spark of connection I felt moments earlier entwined in our shared anguish, but now it was tainted by complexity. Is that why you didn't want me to chase my dreams? I asked, staring into Richard's eyes. You didn't want me stepping out into a world where I could find out the truth? Yes. He snapped, and I flinched at his intensity. I thought by keeping things buried, I could protect our family. But in doing so, I lost you. No, I said, the word tumbling from my lips with a certainty I hadn't felt in weeks. You didn't just lose me, Richard. You lost everything. Silence washed over the table like a thick fog, lingering heavily until Claire broke it, stepping beside me like a supportive pillar. Ben deserves honesty, she said fiercely, looking at her brother. All of us do. As the truth heavy-laden in the air pressed onward, Richard's face fell, crumbled beneath the weight of realization. Then, it hit me, a glimmer of a possibility: forgiveness, not for him, but for me to take my life back, to revive the embers that had been long extinguished. The chaos stirred something within me, a sense of renewal bubbling beneath the surface. I turned to Nicole, feeling a hesitant connection blossom amidst our tragedy. But what do we tell him? The words felt clunky on my tongue. How do we explain this shattered reality? Honesty, she said gently, locking eyes with me. And love. Above all, Ben deserves the truth. He deserves to know that he is loved fiercely, no matter the complications. Perhaps love was the crux after all, igniting a fire that had long been suppressed in my heart. Perhaps it was time to consider forgiveness, not just of Richard, but of myself for how fiercely I had fought to piece my life together alone. That I took a deep breath, my heart racing with uncertainty. Then will you both help me? I glanced at Richard first, hesitance blossoming in my chest. Will you help me tell him the truth? Richard's eyes glistened with the familiar mixture of regret and hope. Yes, I will, he confirmed, voice steadied with determination. Whatever you need, I will do it. The waves of fate rolled forward, unrelenting but inviting. Claire and Nicole joined my outstretched hand, and together, we created an unbreakable chain that could weather the storms ahead. As we stood together, bound by vulnerability, grief, and hope, I felt a spark of aspiration igniting once more, wrapping around my heart like warm tendrils of light. It was a commitment, a foundation of growth shaped not only from our destroyed past but illuminated by the possibility of a tomorrow that embraced the intricacies of love. Then, with fierce resolve, we strove forth, ready to face whatever storms might come next. And in the echoes of shattered lives and hidden truths, I found myself emerging, ready to build anew, proving to Ben and to myself that love, in all its complexity, was the ultimate force of healing, and we would rise together from the ashes. With this clarity unfurled and hope renewed, I felt a lightness wrap around my very being. The journey wasn't over, it had only just begun. The final realization hit me with clarity as I whispered to the universe, almost as a promise, from now on, I will choose to step into the light no longer afraid to embrace the truth and the power within me.